Welcome to Seahawks Draft Blog live stream instant reaction. What a fantastic win for the Seahawks that was against the New York Giants. They improved to 5-3. That is the most enjoyable game of Seahawks football I've watched in a long, long time. And we've got a lot to discuss. Rob Staten, Robbie Williams, Adam Nathan with you here. And let's get into it then, Robbie. What did you make of that? What a win.
Oh, heck of a win. And dare I say it, I might be becoming a Geno fan. I am starting to believe on the Geno train right now.
You are allowed.
I am starting to believe in Geno Smith. And listen, he played lights out today. Threw the ball really, really well. I just love watching Kenneth Walker Jr. run the way the way he runs K9. He's fantastic. I feel like Tariq Woolen didn't get enough love today because they just really didn't throw him that much. And, Mike Jackson's name was called a ton because he was getting thrown on a lot and he was all over the field too. Really hopeful that Ryan Neal is okay, but I thought he played a fantastic game also. All around, what a fun team to watch. I'm really excited about this.
Adam, what do you make of that?
Well, Rob, I'm excited about three things. The first one is that the clocks went back, so it's an hour earlier doing this show, which is always really helpful before a Monday. The second thing is my dog's first birthday in T-minus 15 minutes, so if we can't celebrate that, what are we doing here? And the third thing is I'm excited to see you all in Glendale in February when Geno exercises the ghost of Super Bowl 49, and we bring the whole thing home. Who cares about the draft? We're going to win the Super Bowl. End the show now. It's done.
There we go. That's this week's episode then. Thanks to Robbie and Adam. No, I'm joking. Well, happy birthday to your dog. My dogs are sat having a wonderful sleep behind me. I'm sure Robbie's will be around as well. Always good to have the dogs around. And what a great win. Just what a fantastic win. And it could have been even bigger than it was. But I think the most impressive thing for me is, I went to see the Giants play the Packers live in London. And the way that they beat the Packers is kind of the way that they got their 6 wins up until coming to Seattle, was that they hung around. They didn't play spectacular football. They didn't, throw it 40 times and beat you in the air in an explosive, progressive style. They weren't particularly, dominant on defense or particularly physical. They don't have that sort of one amazing pass rusher who just wrecks games. They were just across the board, play all 3 phases well coached, and they hang around and then they beat you in the fourth quarter. And my fear going into that fourth quarter was that the same thing was happening, that they'd hung around, that to a certain extent, Seattle had let them hang around a little bit. And Tyler Lockett got some great redemption because he was the main culprit of allowing them to hang around. So it was great. That was a really special moment when he got that touchdown for me. But to cut a long story short, just as you sort of fear that the Giants are getting into their wheelhouse, this is when they gets to the fourth quarter and they finish games. Seattle did to them what they've been doing to other teams. The Seahawks stepped up. They took it away from the Giants in the fourth quarter. And it was a fantastic win. We can see that super chats are coming in. We've got a couple already. If you want to send these in, if you have a statement you want to make, if you have a question that you want to ask, what we do is we ask that you do it in a super chat, and then we will put it up on the board. That is just Ask Square, or Ask Square. I don't know. $1.99. A Square. Thank you for that. $1.99. And Devontae Morrison says, Bruce. The Bruce chant there. Yeah, Bruce Irvin did have a good game today. But I thought, let's just start with this, Robbie, because there's all sorts of things we can get into. I thought that the offense was so well crafted today. It was creative. It was aggressive. The motions, the formations, just little things like, just little simple things like having Travis Homer and DJ Dallas sort of line up at the same time, and then one of them motions out, and then you have everybody kind of looking as if they're going to go that way because they've put this formation out, but then you have like Tyler Lockett run the other way and throw it to just little things like that, Robbie, just kept the Giants guessing. And that's the kind of thing it feels like we haven't seen in Seattle throughout the Carroll era. And we saw it today. That was kind of the McVay offense that it felt like we're watching today. I was so impressed with the offensive play calling and the execution of Geno Smith to deliver that offense, because he's got to be able to do that as well. So that was the thing that probably excited me the most, even though there's a long list of things that were so good today.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because Shane Waldron definitely deserves some credit for his play calling today. And I think for the last actually couple of weeks, it's looked pretty fun. And like you said, it looks like the McVay offense, and they're running it well. And I think, with Geno at the helm, he seems to got a good hold on this offense and the way they run the scheme. And it's really fun to watch, and it's cool to see all the motion. You haven't seen this in a long time. I don't think I've ever seen it, even when Russ was playing for us. I don't think I've seen it run this efficiency. It's feeling like a legit offense that can score on pretty much anybody, which if you would have told me, I would have said that at the beginning of the year, I never would have bought that, but this is great.
Yeah. And it's a good Giants defense. It's not, like I said, it's not, Leonard Williams is a really good player. Dexter Lawrence is a really good player, but they don't have that, a Nick Bosa or somebody like that who's going to destroy a game. And they don't have an amazing defensive back who's a bit of a difference maker. But again, the sum of the parts are better than any one individual for the Giants across the board. It's a really tough defense. And I was just so impressed when the game was level. The Giants had just had a long drive and kicked a field goal to tie, I think, at 13-13. And the Seahawks just came flying back. There was hardly any runs in that drive. It was up tempo. It was a pass, touchdown to Tyler Lockett. I thought that was an amazing drive. There was that drive. There was the DK Metcalf touchdown drive as well, which were two of the best touchdown drives I think we've seen in Seattle in years. I mean, possibly dating back to sort of, peak Carroll era a decade ago. Those drives were so much. There's just so much to admire about the way those drives were crafted and executed. Absolutely fantastic. I want to come to Adam for a thought on the offense in a second. A few more super chats coming in. Darth says Seattle, no matter the win-loss record, is the most fun to watch in years. And I think, off the back of the last three, they weren't much fun to watch in the first 4 to 5 games because the defense was disaster zone. But they've improved, and we're going to get on to them. And they are becoming, what you're saying there, Darth, the most fun to watch in years now as a consequence. Thank you for your super chat. Andre says, how about that effing defense? Yeah, we're going to get to that effing defense eventually, Andre. Don't worry about that. Thank you for your super chat. And Jeff says, Cody Barton making plays and maturing a bit. Yeah, he made a few plays today. He got credited with a sack. And he's not been a liability the last couple of weeks, which is good for him. And I'm sure we can talk a bit about that. So, Adam, before we get on to sort of defense and other things, what were your thoughts on the offense today?
I think actually offensively and defensively, you could say the same thing, that what we've craved for the last few years is to watch a team with a clear identity. Now, it's not necessarily that we have to agree with the identity, but at least if you can see what the plan is and what they're trying to do, you can subscribe to that. And I think we'd all agree that in the last few years, it's been, certainly probably up since COVID, just been very muddled what they're trying to do. Are they going to try and throw it? Are they going to try and run it? Who are they drafting? Are they drafting for this purpose or for that purpose? There's not, and perhaps it's a personality thing, but it's just been a lot of sort of trying to plug round holes with ovals or rectangles, and maybe it can squeeze in, and not a disaster, but just not quite right. And deep down, when you know your team, you know what's not quite right. And I think watching today, of all games, and there's been some terrific wins this season, but the offense had some adversity today. Geno Smith got absolutely wrecked a couple of times. And fair play to the Giants. They put a couple of real licks on him, but they stuck true to their identity. And on both sides of the ball, but offense specifically, they said, if we keep doing what the plan is, what we're intending to do, we'll believe in our system to come out on top. And I thought it was terrific. There was no panic. There were no needless trick plays to sort of give a spark. They didn't need a spark. They had to just trust in their ability and trust in their talent and the scheme. And it worked brilliantly. And, an amazing redemption arc for Tyler Lockett, who probably was due for his worst game as a pro before catching what proves to be the game-winning touchdown. I think if anything epitomizes the team right now, it's that. It's just stay on schedule, do your job, and we'll win. And that's as much fun as I've had watching the Seahawks. I don't want to go platitudes, but years. Let's say years.
Yeah, I absolutely, completely agree with that. And I didn't expect to at any point this year to feel invested in a game like I was today. I was really, really desperate for them to win when it got to 13-13. I was thinking back, there were some games like that in sort of 2012, 2013. I think it was 2013 when they played the Titans in Seattle. And I think it finished 20 points to 13. And it felt it was close. It was a game they should win. you kind of felt they'll get the job done because obviously the Seahawks had a better roster. Ryan Fitzpatrick was the Titans quarterback, and they got the job done. And afterwards, it was in the game that you remembered, but it was one that, well, obviously I remembered it because I'm a bit of a saddo. But, technically it was not the kind of entertaining game you remember forever, but it was a sign of the team being able to get the job done. And it did feel a little bit like that today. I know the scoreline in the end got a little bit of extra gloss because of the late touchdown for Ken Walker. So it was 27-13 instead of 20-13. But that similar ability to get the job done was very impressive today. And what an exciting offensive performance. And look, Geno looks fantastic. He looks absolutely brilliant. I was actually wondering, because people have sort of moved on from comeback player of the year to MVP talk now. Can you actually could he actually what's he coming back from?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. What's he coming back from, being just not playing?
I mean, he's more suited to award of biggest surprise of the season rather than comeback player of the year, because he's never really had this before, has he? I mean, this is not a comeback player type thing. But MVP, listen, there's nobody really sort of, I mean, he's going to do well to sort of usurp Josh Allen, I think, in that regard, and maybe Patrick Mahomes. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Obviously, Allen has already beaten the Chiefs, so that probably gives him a step up in the MVP stakes. But it's just a great story. It doesn't necessarily need to come with any silverware at the end in terms of an award. We can enjoy it for what it is, which is a great story. It's one of the great stories in the NFL, and I like him. The way he's on the sideline, his body language, he's got a bit of attitude to him, which I like. He's an easy player to root for based on what we've seen on the field, and just loving it. And the way, there was just like little things, like there was one pass, I think it was to DK Metcalf, which was a risky pass, which was over to the left sideline for a first down. He really drilled it in there. And if you don't throw that ball properly, that's picked off and it's coming back the other way for 6. But he threw it so perfectly with the right velocity, the right accuracy. It was just so impressive to see him playing that way again. And it's been a number of games now. We're 8 games. We're nearly halfway through the season already. And we would be halfway through the season now if it was a regular 16-game season like it should be. And he's played well for half a year. It's beyond just sort of a flourish now. Teams have got tape on Geno Smith, and he's still playing very, very well. We've had this super chat from Cisco. I may not understand this timeline, but I'm here for it. This is the most fun I've had as a fan in years. Playoffs or bust. Yeah, I want to talk a bit about that, because I'm not ready to use the word playoffs or bust. I'm enjoying the season, but the comments, the live chat started with people discussing who they want to trade for before the deadline on Tuesday. I'm not down with that, guys. So we'll get onto that a little bit later on. This one from Slacker Hero says, feel bad for doubting Pete. Geno is a goddamn gamer. Guy made so many tough throws today. Really love rooting for this team. Thank you to Slacker Hero for the super chat, and for Cisco. Keep those coming in. If you have a comment that you want to chuck in there, then we'll come straight to it if you do it in a super chat form. Or
Rob, can I quickly respond to that last one? Sorry.
Of course you can.
I don't think anyone should apologize for doubting Pete, because what's clear from the last couple of years is that Pete Carroll was doubting what Pete Carroll was doing. He got himself into a funk and probably went so far away from his philosophy that the team weren't performing to the way they should. And like I just said, I think we're back to seeing what a Pete Carroll team looks like. And when you watch the team now, you wonder almost how we managed to go the last 3 or 4 years trying to do what they did, because it was just a big pot of nothingness. So no one should apologize for doubting Pete, because I really think he went away from his own core philosophies. And if he hadn't, who knows what may have happened.
Yeah, and also, I don't think anybody could watch the way the defense played in the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season and say, oh, this is fine. It wasn't. It evidently was not. And now it's a lot better. I'd rather not have this every year, though, where the defense is terrible for a few weeks and then rights the ship. And I hope that this is the last season that happens. I hope that as they show their progress a bit earlier than they have in previous years, that this is maybe they can build on this shift they've gone to hybrid scheme, and that we can avoid that in the future. And if they can continue to build the defense and get more pieces, then we can avoid a slow start next year. But it was fair game to ask some questions of Pete and the future of this team at the start of the year. They were losing games and the defense was an absolute car crash. And it's also okay now to say, wow, what a great job in turning that around and helping because we always said, like, what would this team's record be right now if the defense had just been average for the first few games of the season? They'd be, 7-1? They'd be 7-1. They probably wouldn't have beaten the Niners, because that was across the board, that was a poor performance. But they'd have won the other 7 games. and handsomely so if the defense average. So there was no issue with bringing that up. I think part of the problem is, though, Adam, is there is a section of the fan base that is absolutely desperate to argue amongst itself constantly. We saw it last week. Everything has to be, were you a Pete truther or not? Because if not, you better eat some crow now. Were you pro or anti Russell Wilson? Because that's going to come back to you. I wish we could just forget that and just stop arguing with each other and enjoy the team. And when there's things to criticize, let's criticize them. When there's things to be really positive about, let's be really positive about. And today's a positive day. So let's just focus on that rather than who needs to be eating crow or anything like this. I don't see the point in that. So offense, fantastic. Ken Walker looks great. Good on Tyler Lockett for bouncing back, because that could have been a rough day for him otherwise. Getting that great touchdown. Offense looks amazing. Robbie, we've talked a bit about the defense, but there's so much to like about that as well, the way it's turned around. Uchenna Nwosu has been fantastic. What a free agent signing he's been. I absolutely loved seeing Shelby Harris chasing down Daniel Jones on that third down. That was a great plan. I love the reaction of the sideline after, and Clint Hurt was jumping up around. Everyone loved all of that. He really got the energy going on the sideline. The young secondary, I really hope that Ryan Neal's okay. I suspect we'll get an update because Pete's speaking now, so we'll hear something on that soon. But he's been such a force at safety. I really don't want to lose him for any length of time. But the cornerbacks continue to play well. Quandre Diggs looks a lot better when everybody else is playing well. The linebackers are playing well now because the D-line's playing a bit better. They still clearly lack that X-factor pass rusher, because there was a few third and longs, wasn't there, where they gave them up trying to rush with 4, and they haven't got that one person who can win 1v1 when they're rushing with 4. Hopefully they can find that in the next couple of years. But overall, Robbie, a really good defensive performance.
Yeah, I mean, my only critique on the defense is, again, just quite a few missed tackles still, but they're kind of holding guys, a little bit, and able to wrap up and get guys as a gang. They're getting in there and tackling all together, and I like seeing the D-line get after it today. But man, that secondary is phenomenal. I'm really excited about the future of the corners, and again, with Ryan Neal there, and just it's fun to watch. It gives me something like kind of what we were talking about earlier in the season, just seeing young guys and the foundation and how they're building up for the future. And it's really exciting to see these guys play so well. And then guys like Mike Jackson, who just, where the hell did he come from? All of a sudden he's a gamer, man. He's going out there and he's hitting guys, and he's in the right spot and knocking balls away. And you feel good about the young secondary and just the possibility to have to grow together. It's super fun to watch.
Yeah, Mike Jackson was really good today. What stood out for you, Adam, on the defensive side of things?
I think I touched upon it last week, that just the general team speed looks like it's back to what it's not been for half a decade. That everywhere you look, I mean, Mike Jackson in particular, 2 or 3 passes that Jones really zipped in his direction, and Jackson was there in a heartbeat and just to whack someone. I don't think Woolen was really tested today, which may be a part Daniel Jones thing, a part maybe his reputation is starting to come to the fore in team meetings in the week. But in a way, as perverse as this sounds, I almost wish they got to play someone better than Daniel Jones, and they will get a chance to do that in the not too distant future. But I'm fascinated to see what the ceiling is of this defense, because they're electric. They may lack a dominant pass rusher, but Pete Carroll's never really been the guy that's wanted to coach a defense that has one guy getting 17, 18 sacks. It's much more about rush with 4 and then see what you can do in the back end. And again, philosophically and ideology wise, I just think this is what Seahawks football. It reminds me of what Seahawks football means to me, watching them play, without getting overly sort of emotional, hyperbolic. It's sports is everything to so many people, and there's an emotional value attached to it. And it seems daft, eulogizing about a defense in this way on the middle of October or whatever, but that's just great. And I'm just so thrilled to get to see that.
I'm going to share this comment and generally just share the super chats, but every now and again a comment comes in that I want to share, and Curtis has posted this. Pete Carroll, what did you say to Tyler Lockett after the drop? I told him he's the best wide receiver I've ever had. Someone should put that clip to like the Titanic music or something on Twitter. That'll get a lot of clicks over the next few days. It just looks great. The defense is fast, like you say, Adam. It's fast, flows to the ball. It seems to have come together as a collective. Whether it's that comfort level, and as I've said, I really hope that they can get to a point where they can discover a comfort level in training camp next year, so that we don't have to have 5 weeks of bilge before they get to this point. But it looks really good, and I totally appreciate what you're saying, Adam. They've never had a guy who is, and partly it's because they've never been in position to acquire a guy, because you don't generally trade for a Bosa brother, a Myles Garrett, a Von Miller. You have to be picking in the top 5 to get those players, and they've never been in the top 5 ever in the Carroll era to pick somebody like that. And by all accounts, they're not going to be picking in the top 5 again next year, because Denver got a win today, and you have to be really bad to pick in the top 5. And Denver are not good, but they're not really, really bad either. So
can I speak on that real fast?
Well, you can, yeah. Go on then, Robbie.
I watched that game today, and I think Denver looks terrible. And they're playing Jacksonville, who didn't look very good. But think about, okay, even if they win their next 2 of 3 games, they're at Tennessee, which I expect them to lose that one. Then they play they play at home against the Raiders, which they've already lost the Raiders once, but they could win. They win that one, and they're going to beat Carolina, because Carolina is just trash. But then they have Baltimore, Kansas City twice, the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Chargers. They could lose their last 6 games.
Well, they could do, but I don't think they will. I don't think they will. And like, look, the Rams look an absolute disaster zone at the moment. So I wouldn't back them to beat anybody with the way that they're playing. They just got their arses handed to them again by the Niners today. And for me, the Broncos just look like a team that they're not going to be very good. It'll be touch and go whether they even get into the playoff mix, but I don't think they're going to be bad enough to pick in the top 5. The top 5 is, that is special, rare air. That is really, really bad territory there. And however bad they may have looked, Robbie, they didn't look as bad as Jacksonville, and Jacksonville lost that game. And that's why I think when the shake-up has come, you've got Detroit and Houston and potentially Carolina and maybe Jackson and those teams like that are going to end up down there, and Denver might be close to the kind of range they were a year ago. What did they give us? The 9th pick? It might have to be something like that. But then they might even get a few more, and it might be the 12th pick. I'm just sort of preparing myself for that now. My hopes, I thought if they'd have lost today, I think it could have collapsed like a pack of cards. But I think that the fact that they've won today might give them a bit of something, especially because it's in London. So we'll see. That's a topic we can perhaps get back to at the end. But basically what I was saying is they're not going to be able to get that top pass rusher maybe. But maybe they'll trade up and get him. I don't know. Who knows? They've got 2 first-round picks. Maybe they'll go and get him next year. And I think if they get that player, Robbie, then the defense will look really, really good. They do need that. I watched a bit of red zone while I was watching the Seahawks, and like Jeffrey Simmons was there. That's the kind of player that they need. They need somebody who can really collapse the interior from inside and make pressure and create pressure. Now, there are players like that in this draft. I don't think there's going to be anywhere close to the level Jeffrey Simmons was. And the only reason he lasted as long as he did was because of off the field stuff. But that's the kind of player that it could be the final piece even for this defense with the way it's playing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good player. I think they're a couple pieces away on the D line. I'd like to see them, an interior guy and then an outside and maybe a linebacker or 2. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really think that the way that this D is playing right now, adding a piece like that would be, beneficial. I don't want them to trade. Obviously, we've talked about this. I don't want them to trade any other draft picks to go get somebody. But if they can draft right, and I think I honestly just don't believe in the Broncos. I really don't. I think they're going to be they look garbage. I think they're going to give us at least a pick in the top 7 would be my guess. And we could maybe get, I don't know, the board better than I do, but there's an opportunity to continue to improve this team within the first, 3 rounds of this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to linger on it too much, but right now the Denver pick is 10th overall, and teams ahead of them, like Detroit, Houston, Carolina, Pittsburgh, are looking absolute joke. Jacksonville, they've just lost to Denver. The Raiders are abysmal. The Raiders are really bad. They're 2-5 now, I think, or 2-6, or whatever it is. Cleveland don't look very good at all. I know they'll get Deshaun Watson later in the year, but season might be over by then. They've lost 4 in a row. They're going to give their pick to Houston. Tampa Bay look bad. There's a lot of bad teams in the NFL, and yeah, I'm not convinced that pick's going to be top 7, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think really just a really strong defensive performance. And I tell you one thing, Adam, I even enjoyed even the Pete Carroll flag at the end of the game. I kind of enjoyed that. You know, it was a fun moment. Everyone, you know, it didn't cost anything. I enjoyed it. I even enjoyed that. That's where we're at now, Adam. I'm enjoying the coach being flagged.
And I think, you know, we hear quite a lot about how Pete works in 4 or 5 year cycles with his players, that it is the same story in the first day of every training camp, and it is the same sort of hype material. But when you're in with Pete Carroll, or when you're sort of so intoxicated by what Pete wants to say to you as a player, you'll absolutely love that. And it'll be something that comes up on tape, I'm sure, until the Truth Monday of, you know, when they go through the team penalties they had. I'm sure someone like Clint Hurt will put Pete on blast in front of the whole team, and it'll bring their house down, because that's the kind of stuff that happens when you're a winning team. And it's, you know, every player in the NFL is amazing at what they do. So if you're able to find the little things that keep the mentality strong and keep you buzzing and focus on the next game, have at it. And yeah, I've been as big a Pete critic as there's been, but I only like to think, I try and call it like I see it. And so when I've criticized Pete, it's because I think I've seen bad stuff. And as I've always said, there's nothing better than being wrong about your team if it means something's going right. And that's where I am right now. So that's right.
Yeah, I like that. And I forgot to mention this. I really liked one of my favorite parts of the whole game during that Pete penalty was the Seattle Mariners was part of the issue. That was pretty funny for me. I enjoyed that.
I'm looking at the standings in the NFC, because the NFC continues to be a real muddle, doesn't it? And I just wonder, as we kind of look at where the Seahawks are now at 5-3, they retain first place in the NFC West. The 49ers look good. I'm sort of keeping half an eye on that game rather than actually sort of fully focusing, of course, because watching the Seahawks game. I can't tell whether the Niners are actually, you know, wow, a team to be reckoned with now, and could even be maybe the strongest team in the conference if they can play like that more often than not, or whether it's just that the Rams are that bad that they made the Niners look better than they are. The Cardinals look like the Cardinals when they lost to the Vikings. You know, some good, but also a lot of bad. The NFC South. Did you see the game between the Falcons and the Panthers? I mean, that was just crazy. And the Falcons are now top of the NFC South. You know, now that the Seahawks are 5-3, that loss to the Falcons really pisses me off, because that should not have been a loss. And yet there they are, top of the NFC South. What a horrible, wretched division that is right now. And the Vikings are 6-1, and if the Packers lose to Buffalo tonight, they'll be 3-5, and then you've got obviously the Eagles at 7-0, and the Cowboys and the Giants at 6-2, and the Seahawks just beating the Giants. I mean, even the Eagles, Robbie, do not particularly look. I mean, like, it's easy to sort of admire the Eagles and say they've got something of a complete team, great pass rush, creative offense, you know, some good players. They do give off a bit of a vibe to me of a team that could easily sort of get the number 1 seed in the NFC and then lose their first playoff game there.
Yeah, I think for me it starts with Jalen Hurts. I just don't know how much I believe in the guy. I mean, I know the team has rallied around him as the quarterback and such, but I've yet to see. I feel like a complete game, I would say, from him. I mean, he's definitely playing well, but for me, it starts there. But I mean, their defense seems to be playing well. You know, they're looking to add pieces, you know, in the running back room. I know Miles Sanders is pretty good. You know, AJ Brown went off today, so they have good pieces in place, but they do kind of have that vibe of a young team, just not quite ready to make that big splash.
Adam, where would you rank? I mean, it's hard to do it, perhaps, unless you've got the list of teams in front of you. But where do you think the Seahawks rank in the NFC? I'll maybe help you out a little bit by sort of giving my thoughts on it. I think obviously the Eagles have to be number 1. I would then probably go with the Niners number 2, based on what I saw today. I know the 4-4. Then maybe I think then maybe sort of the Cowboys, Vikings, and Seahawks might all be kind of in a similar range, because maybe the Cowboys are a bit better. Maybe they've got a few more better players. I don't know. But I think the Vikings are a bit of a, like, you could play the Vikings and get blown out, and you could easily play the Vikings and blow them out. And there's everything between that as well. So I'm not sure. And then, do you know what? Of all these teams, I still wouldn't want to play Aaron Rodgers in a playoff game. So, I don't think you discount them completely as well. But that's kind of how I'd view it. I think you've got the Eagles, the Niners, and then I'm not sure. But the fact that we're even having a conversation about who is the third best, and maybe the Seahawks could work their way into that contention is wow, it's way beyond, I think my expectations, and I suspect most people's.
I think from memory, thinking back to those 2 NFC Championship games, you woke up that morning of those games thinking, oh my God, this is going to be just a slobber knocker, to nick a wrestling word. And I feel like, and this may be quite arrogant and sort of reducing what a team like Philadelphia are doing now, I don't feel like I'd be nervous waking up the morning of a playoff game unless I thought the Seahawks were playing the Niners, the Rams, or, funnily enough, the Packers, as you say, Rob. I don't think I'd get that pit of, oh my goodness, this is going to be painful. Now, maybe there's a rivalry element to that, but I just can't see that we wouldn't be suited to playing almost anyone in the NFC at this stage. And to throw it back at you, Robert, a question I've been mulling for a little while is, do you think it matters that due to parity, the Seahawks have perhaps been elevated when you think about the rebuild and the long term? Or is it just a case of, for the next 3 or 4 years, the league isn't going to be maybe of the quality that we're expecting, and so just win what you can? Because it does strike me that 5-3 this year may be 4-4 or 3-5 when the level of the league is higher. I appreciate it's quite a difficult question to ask, but I wonder if both of you feel like it matters what the quality of the opposition is like when you're evaluating how good the team are now.
Well, I think it does, but I think we're living. You have to play the hand that you're dealt. I always feel that way, whether it's the draft or essentially your schedule or the NFC that you find yourselves in. We're living in an era now where some especially big name older quarterbacks, your Aaron Rodgers and your Tom Brady, who've been playing in the NFC, are coming to the end. That's what it looks like anyway. Again, wouldn't rule out Rodgers or Brady in the playoffs if they get there, but it looks like they're coming to the end. And the top young quarterbacks in the league, the ones that you genuinely would, like when we play the Chiefs, I will be a little bit fearful of that game on Christmas Eve. More so now because I feel I'd be like, if the Seahawks still got a winning record by then, I really want them to win on Christmas Eve. And I've had many Christmas Eves ruined by the Seahawks over the years, blowing games right before Christmas. And I don't want that to happen. I thought this would be a nice Christmas Eve. I don't give a toss whether they won or not. But now I'm starting to feel like, oh, actually, that game might mean something. So, yeah, if you're playing Mahomes, you'd be a bit fearful. If you're playing Josh Allen, you'd be fearful. They've beaten Justin Herbert, which is a great sign, but I don't think the Chargers are anywhere close to their best last weekend. Still a fantastic win for the Seahawks, though. You've got a lot of the top sort of young. Joe Burrow is in the AFC as well. So all of the sort of the top young quarterbacks are in that conference. So what does it mean for the Seahawks in terms of the state of this rebuild? I think somehow Geno Smith is playing in a way that nobody expected. The team is because the offense has been so brilliant and the defense has now caught up. They look competent, and I think just right now you roll with it. You kind of just go with it, and you hope for the best, and you see where you can go. I mean, look, you only have to look through the years, and this isn't going to happen every year. It might be that in 12 months' time there's a clear, and maybe it's even the Eagles, a clear team that is the obvious best, and they shoot through. It might be the Niners. Who knows? There might be that team that emerges. But there have been teams over the years who've kind of got to the Super Bowl. And when you think back and look back at it and you think, they were in a Super Bowl. The Ravens winning the Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, for example. That was not a particularly amazing Baltimore roster. It was just well organized, and Joe Flacco hit a hot streak. Geno Smith's on a hot streak. Could Geno Smith hit a hot streak in the playoffs? Who knows? Maybe. The Panthers under Cam Newton. Cam Newton was MVP. He was unstoppable for a regular season. But when you actually look at that Panthers team, look through it, I mean, yeah, it was okay, I guess. The Broncos won that Super Bowl basically playing without a quarterback for a third of the season, with Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler taking it in turns to be really awful. So I think you just go with it. And from the Seahawks perspective now, I mean, I'm sure we'll get on to the draft maybe and where they stand in that regard because, Seahawks draft blog and all that. But I think right now I've kind of given up on the, looking at who the top sort of 5, 6, 7 or 8 are going to be. And I'm now more thinking, well, I'm just going to focus on watching as many players as possible, building my horizontal board, wanting the Seahawks to win, not really caring what Denver do because what's the point? That'll just be what it is. And we'll see what they get at the end of the year and see who they can get because I don't think they're going to be picking high enough to get the top players. And therefore, win as many games as you can. That's kind of how I kind of view it right now. Robbie?
Well, I'll just go back to the original question. Yeah, I think you just play the hand that you're dealt. I mean, I've seen some comments already, people talking about the Eagles haven't played anybody really other than like the Cowboys or something like that. But I mean, yeah, you just play the hand that you're dealt. I mean, you can't fault them for that. I mean, even so, someone else even said like we lost to the Saints and to the or I'm sorry, who do we lose? Not the Saints, but the Falcons. I mean, yeah, the Falcons. I mean, it's just like there's games that you should win. There's games that if you look back and go, damn it, like during the season, like we should have won that game. We could have positioned ourselves better, in the playoffs, or we would have just lost this game. We got a better draft pick, or whatever the case might be. You can just play the hand that you're dealt. So that's kind of just the same kind of philosophy I think that I had with Rob there.
Some good news, right? Apparently, Ryan Neal only had cramps. So that is really good.
That's
I don't know if you've
good.
noticed this, because I picked up on this watching the All Access thing they did last week, that Ryan Neal seems to be the guy in the huddle. Geno Smith does some of the huddles, but also Ryan Neal does some of the huddles. And I just find that great, that he has emerged. He's been an impactful player for 3 seasons now for the Seahawks. He just has a knack of making plays, and the defense looks better, I think, a lot because of him being back as well. I think he's played a big role in that. And just, another player that I really like that has just got that attitude, that intensity. So, really good that he's only got cramps there. Adam, let me sort of put it back to you. You sort of introduced that very interesting question. How far could this Seahawks team go? Or is it too early to be asking a question like that? Because we are halfway through the season now. We have an angle of what this team is, what it could be, what other teams can be. They are clearly playing in the better side of the draw, so to speak. And look, England got to a semi-final of a World Cup and the final of the Euros by being in the right side of the freaking draw. So maybe the Seahawks can benefit in a similar way.
Well, if they can somehow scramble and win the division, I can't believe I'm even bringing that up as a potential thing, and get a home game. I think we all know what can happen in that scenario. I mean, if someone gave you a significant amount of money and said you had to bet this on when the Seahawks are going to definitely what's beyond them, I think the guys on the other side of the bracket in the AFC are the only teams that are, I would say, hand on heart, like they're just better than us, more developed, way further down the line. And look, obviously it's sport and that's why we love it. You can win any game, but if they played the Chiefs or the Bills 10 times, they'd lose 8.5, 9, probably, the way in which they're currently set up. I don't feel that way about anyone in the NFC. Now they could lose to the Eagles very easily. They could run all over us and, a championship game, or, down there in the divisional round with the atmosphere they get, they could take us to the cleaners, quite possibly. But I'm sure Eagles fans are thinking, Seattle could be us if they play like that. So I'd probably look at it like that, to be honest. One thing I am thinking, and sorry to sort of make a separate point, if anyone ever tells you that tanking is the best way for their roster to develop for the future in the NFL, I think this season is proving such a great example of how that's just not the case. I mean, the mood of everyone after a few wins. Like, who cares if it's costing them 4 spaces in the draft? But think of what those players are learning and the development for next year. And it is a league where you can turn yourself around so quickly. And the Seahawks would have had a perfect examples and reasons and excuses for tanking. If Pete Carroll said, look, we traded our quarterback, what do you want us to do? We're going to have a year where we do sort of, try and build for the next year. Everyone would have probably said, yeah, not great, going to be boring, but fair play. But what they've managed to achieve from a fan side of things and the development side of things, don't let anyone tell you that tanking is the way to go, because there are many, many ways that you can build a team to develop, and it's not about picking 7th as opposed to 14th in the draft.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And in fairness, I don't know many people who wanted to tank. I think it was more a case of if it happens, it happens, so to speak. But you're right. There is more to be had with the building momentum of a team, and we saw that obviously a decade ago. Seattle was never bad. Even those 7 and 9 teams, they were never bad enough to pick really, really early, and yet you could feel that something was building there. And if you draft well, like they did last year, then you can become a good team. I think the great thing, and this is why I love the NFL so much, is it does constantly make you think, and it challenges you, and you look at, and not just in terms of how you view the game. And I think there are people who are inflexible in how they view the game, and Pete Carroll's actually probably one of them. But that's not unfair, because he has been flexible on a number of things over the years. That's just a joke. It's a glib remark. I mean, the analytics crowd are not movable in terms of their opinions. But you see what I'm getting at there? But it makes you kind of think. And with the team building side of things, it makes you think as well, because you have these draft classes where you have, a lot of quarterbacks, for example, who go very, very early. And you think of 2018 when Baker Mayfield goes first, Sam Darnold goes second. You've got Josh Rosen going like 10th overall or something like that. And then Josh Allen's kind of sandwiched in the middle, like 8th or 9th overall, 7th overall, or whatever he was. And all of the feeling going into that draft was, this is a great draft class for quarterbacks. And it just doesn't work out that way. You can say it's worth losing to be in that position to get a great quarterback, and then that great quarterback doesn't ever amount to anything. And then you look at it at the minute, Trevor Lawrence was Andrew Luck Mark II. Trevor Lawrence looks like crap. I thought it was hilarious that everybody on Twitter was collectively going, I know this is a bit of this is a hot take, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence is very good. But it's not so much a hot take when literally everybody's saying it, because everybody's watching him play like he did against the Broncos today. Although we could watch it over here because it was on national TV. Over in America, it was on ESPN+, so I'm not sure how many people actually got a chance to watch it. But he's awful. He looked awful. He does not look very, very good. And yet that was a home run for the Jaguars. It was tank for Trevor. And he doesn't look very good. Zach Wilson looked terrible today. Zach Wilson looked amazing at BYU. Lawrence and Wilson avoided the mistakes that, for example, CJ Stroud and Will Levis and Bryce Young have made over the last few weeks. They didn't have the kind of issues that we've seen from those three in college. And yet look at them making the mistakes now in the NFL. So you kind of think this. But then the other side of that is, as I was sort of thinking about that earlier today, was the only reason that the Bengals have gone from an absolute embarrassment, a laughingstock, to the Super Bowl in 2 years, because they drafted Joe Burrow. So it does make you sort of think about everything, and there is more way. And ultimately, I think the conclusion you come to is the saying is, there's more than one way to skin a cat, Robbie. There are different ways to build a team. As it happens, this Seahawks team might be the figurehead of the rebuild. Could be that they gave a 32-year-old journeyman quarterback a chance to start, and he just so happened to be strangely good, to the point that people are actually starting to compare him to bloody Kurt Warner. I mean, it's just, I don't know but isn't that just what makes the NFL so great? That just when you think there's one way of doing this, it's be crap, draft a good quarterback, maybe be crap for another couple of years, and then everything will be great. There's like about 15 ways to build a team.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up Trevor Lawrence, just because of the way he's playing, and these guys come out and they're not always going to be an Andrew Luck or someone like that you think's just absolute home run. And Trevor Lawrence was that guy, right? He was supposed to be super, just the next best thing, and he just looks terrible. So there's no guarantee sucking for the best quarterback is going to be what's going to get you over the top. And you start thinking about this draft class, and there's been so many players that we've been watching for the last, I don't know, since we traded Wilson, we were starting to, eye on the quarterback, and start, who's coming out, who's available, and all these people throwing out names, and you look at, clearly Will Levis is a blog favorite, our favorite player, and who we would love to have. But there's players out there that have the potential to be really good if they were to sit behind, say, a Geno Smith for a year and learn, or maybe even 2 years, and a guy that you liked early on, Jaron Hall. I watched his game, another BYU guy. I think that he has the potential. He's struggled the last couple of weeks, but the way that he played early on in the season and the way that he played last year, I just like his game. I don't know if I like how they're playing right now, BYU as a whole, but that he has the potential. I'd love to see him turn it around. There are guys like Tyler Van Dyke, who I'm still a big fan of, who, is playing in the worst system for a quarterback ever. And it's just killing his draft stock. And so maybe there's an opportunity that, he declares, and then we, get him in the second round and let him sit for a year or two. And he turns out to be really good. There's always opportunities to improve your team. And I think if we can make a home run like we did this last draft and make a smart decision at quarterback and not force the hand, I think we have a good opportunity to be even better.
And one of the things that has proven to be the case is that if you don't overthink things, and if you go with the mindset of building in the trenches and trying to upgrade there, then you can have success. And the Seahawks have done that. They spent on the offensive line. They brought in Boya Mafe. They got a running back who kind of fits their identity, who can be an X factor type. So, that's the great thing. I think that you go and do that again, and it sort of brings me on to the next subject that I want to get into. Is people, like I said, started the live chat talking about whether the Seahawks should trade for this player or trade for that player, because the trade deadline is coming on Tuesday, and we're seeing all of these teams being linked with these moves, and people loved. I've been asked 100 questions on the blog or via email. Should we trade for this guy? Should we trade for that guy? And my answer has been no to every single player, because however the Seahawks might benefit from having a rental, the idea of now spending a third or a second round pick on someone who's out of contract at the end of the season, that's the kind of move that's cost the Seahawks in the past. It's the Sheldon Richardson thing again. It's the Jamal Adams thing again. It's, don't do that. You've had a fantastic draft class where you just kept your picks. You didn't move up and down the board. You kept them. You picked the right players in the right position, and you are benefiting so much from that. And I am convinced that they're going to stick to the guns and do that and keep the picks. They've been so disciplined with these picks, protecting them. They haven't frittered them away. They haven't made trades in the off season or in training camp, or when things are struggling, they haven't gone out and traded for somebody. I'm convinced that if they do anything, I think it would trade Sidney Jones for like a 7th, and they'll have another pick. I don't think they're going to trade any picks away. But even if, I have no interest in that, Robbie. I wouldn't even trade a 4th for somebody. I don't want to see any trades. And I don't want Roquan Smith, because then you've got to pay him a massive contract. That's what's got him in trouble in the past, paying too much money at linebacker. I don't want Bradley Chubb, because you have to pay him 20+ million a year, and you'd have to do it either now, or you'd have to franchise tag him and go down that road, and that just becomes a mess as well. I don't want to do any of that stuff. If Deron Payne's a free agent at the end of the season, I'm all in for bringing Deron Payne to Seattle. I don't want to trade anything for him now and have him for half a season. Not interested. Roll with what you've got. Keep your picks. Have another great draft. Make the most of these picks next year. That's what I want to see. Have you got a different opinion on that, Robbie? Or not?
No, I don't know where our lines got crossed, but I definitely not saying trade any of our picks. I'm saying keep our picks and have another great draft class like that. I was mostly referring to the quarterbacks. Like, it doesn't make sense to just suck for a quarterback and then get one and then think you're going to be fine, because we've seen it time and time again where that doesn't help. So no, I totally am in agreement with you. I think keep our picks, and like I said, there could be a Jaron Hall or someone who has the possibility to be a good player, but just needs some time to sit, if we're looking at quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect they might even just, if they're not in position to draft a great, I mean, look, and I still think Anthony Richardson would be a good option for them to draft and develop, but and sit for a while. But if they're not in range, then I think they'll probably just re-sign Drew Lock, and Lock and Gino seem to be getting on quite well. Drew Lock's surprisingly good at basketball as well. I saw that video the Seahawks put out the other day. Ty says, system is everything. Shane Waldron deserves credit. Yeah, Shane Waldron, I have to give him a 10 out of 10 for what he's shown so far this year. Absolutely brilliant. And that was masterpiece today in terms of offensive scheming and execution, I thought. If you've got a super chat, keep them coming. We're going to do probably another 10 minutes or so. It all supports the channel, so would love some of those. But Adam, on the subject of trades, is there anything that would tempt you at all? Because people are now starting to think, oh, if we could just get this, if we could just get that, maybe the Seahawks could really achieve something this year.
I'm not particularly worried about this. And I think the main reason for that is that in general, the Seahawks have used trades to cover up mistakes they've made in the draft in the first place. So kind of doubling down on errors by sort of spending twice as many picks on fixing the same things. I mean, Sheldon Richardson came about, if I'm not mistaken, just after Malik McDowell got hurt. And I think they had to have someone to fill that space. Quandre Diggs came in, albeit that was a late-ish round pick, but that was because the safeties they drafted weren't really up to much. And Jamal Adams is the same thing. I think there's quite a few examples of Seahawks using trades to fill gaps where they've drafted poorly. And I think even back to the 2021 draft, where they just took the three players and the three positions they had and didn't try to get clever. And then last year, I think that maybe showed a shift in expectation and what they're trying to do, in the sense that, this is what we've got. We're going to use this and we're going to try and follow some sort of plan. And I was talking to someone in the week who was saying that, actually about Jamal Adams, and he is a Jamal Adams fan, but this idea of when someone's traded in for a big amount of whatever, there's pressure on them, and you start to highlight what they are not doing particularly well versus what they are doing well. And if you compare that to someone like Ryan Neal, who might miss the odd thing, our expectations for him are much lower. And so when we see him making picks and tackles, it's like, wow, that's amazing. Whereas Jamal may have done a similar kind of thing. But that makes me think about, well, Tyler Lockett has come out with a quite remarkable comment today. And he said in his press conference, it's amazing what we can accomplish when no one cares who gets the credit. I think there's probably a fair amount of inferential reading you can do into that and suggest what he's saying. But I think that also is quite pertinent at this time, where you think, well, if you bring someone in like Roquan Smith at the trade, not that he'd be seeking the credit, but it just shifts that focus off the collective and onto what an individual is doing. And I think so far this year, it's been so great that we're not worrying about who's doing what. The team are doing that. That I don't envisage that they'll do anything dramatic, because I think it might imbalance sort of the status quo of the season so far.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. And I think it is one of the things that has been so I'm just replying in the live chat to suggest that Stetson Bennett is not going to go in the second round. There was a great stat about Stetson Bennett, just on a complete massive segue onto that. Stetson Bennett is older than about half of the quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I saw that statistic at the weekend, which I thought was interesting. I think if you bring in a big name, like you say, Adam, there is a chance that it can upset the apple cart slightly. And people have been going on about Cody Barton and replacing Cody Barton and bringing in a linebacker. Who is there? Which linebacker are you trading for here? Who can do this role? And people say Roquan Smith, but then again, it's going to cost you an absolute fortune. You've just got away from paying a linebacker, and everybody loves Bobby Wagner, et cetera, et cetera. He wasn't worth $18 million last year. He wasn't worth $20 million this year. That's why they moved on. To go back into that situation where you're paying someone like Roquan Smith that much money would not be a good idea. And you bring him in, and all that focus goes to them. It's not stood it's never worked for Seattle. They're better off sort of finding those. If they're going to make a trade, it's that this player isn't wanted by anybody anymore, but we actually know that they were considered to be good ones. We're going to bring them in as a reclamation project, and that is the Diggs, the Lynch. Chris Clemens had a bit of a flourish. I think it was with the Eagles, wasn't it? They did the trade with, but they kind of wanted rid of him, so they brought him to Seattle, and he was good. It's that kind of trade. If they're going to do anything, I want to see that. But I'm not interested. Like, Seattle's playing well. They don't need to force the issue here. I don't think that, like the Eagles go and get Robert Quinn because they think that, every little helps. We want to get a Super Bowl this year. I don't think the Seahawks are in that position. I think the Seahawks are still in the build, in the rebuild. A rebuild doesn't mean you don't have to be rubbish to be in a rebuild. You can be 5-3 and still in the process of a rebuild of your team. I still think they're in that process, and let's just see where this goes. This what is increasingly becoming a really entertaining movie that we're going to watch in here this Seahawks season, without needing to go out and force the issue and make a desperate trade to try and get a little bit better between now and the end of the season. And any player you get now is going to be a rental. It's not going to be somebody who's under contract for years. So that's it's not something that I would particularly want to do. So yeah, I think keep the picks, and I think it'd just be great to sort of go into the draft. And I've spoken, Robbie, a lot on the blog that I don't think this is a particularly amazing first round of the draft that's coming up, but you have that flexibility to move up. If you want to go and get Will Anderson, you might be able to do it. If you want to, if one of these defensive tackles really floats your boat, you might be able to go and get them. If you want to go and get one of these quarterbacks to sit behind Geno Smith and develop, you can perhaps do that. If you've got a lot of options there. In the offseason, you might be able to use one of those picks in a trade, but I think that's a better time to do it than now, because then you might be getting somebody who is under contract or something like that. Or the Eagles trade of AJ Brown is an example of a trade that I can get behind. If they do that next year with one of their first round picks, fine. Preferably not for a linebacker or a safety again, but by the by, a pass rusher or whatever, great. But I don't think there's anything wrong with keeping your picks. And do you know what, Robbie? As much as I've talked about build the trenches, I think it's also about get talent. And if you get into the draft and the best player available in your spot is a receiver, go and get him. If the best player is a quarterback and you feel good about it, go and take him anyway. Just add more talent. That's what the focus should be.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I want to replace Cody Barton as much as the next person, right? But I don't want to go trade, first or second round pick, even a third, fourth round pick for a linebacker that, like you said, is going to be a rental. So keep your picks, see what you can get, and, play your hand in the offseason with free agents and whatever you can do to get somebody in. But, you want to move up and down the board. John Snyder was really good at doing that. So he has the opportunity with the amount of picks that he has to go get the players that they think is going to help this team going forward. And I'd love for them to stay put and kind of get the guys that, as you said, if it's a corner, if it's a safety, if it's a wide receiver, whoever fits the bill. I miss the days where we would go to a draft and we would draft players and we'd be like, other than maybe the top 3 picks, we don't know if the rest of the guys will make the team because we have such a deep team. I miss those things. We got to build that up again. Get good depth on our depth chart so we can have an opportunity to, if someone goes down, we don't have to worry about Joey Hunt coming in playing center or something like that. You know what I mean? Like,
one thing that I think we've missed a little bit here is if they were that bothered about Cody Barton, they'd have brought more competition in for him, either via the draft or via free agency. They see Cody Barton's position, I think, as not all that important. And yeah, do you know what? In the offseason, the chances are they're going to upgrade that position or try to with a cheap veteran or a draft pick. But I don't think it'll be a high draft pick, Adam. I think it's going to be. I don't think they're putting a whole bunch of value in that position. I think that they're just sort of content with it, and hopefully either Barton continues to build on a better performance today, or they eventually find a replacement down the line. But I don't think it's a position they're particularly worried about right now. I think it's clear for me that the thing that the team needs is that a great rusher, either off the edge or on the interior. And I think the way that this defense plays, off with the edges and with the players in space, with the way that Nwosu's playing and Maffei's showing something, I'm sure Darrell Taylor will come back and try and have an impact once he's worked out this scheme. I think what you really need is that Calais Campbell, Jeffrey Simmons type who collapses the pocket. If they can get that, then I think it's really good. And then an offense, if you can add another receiver. I mean, I've got a whole long list of receivers on my horizontal board already that I'd happily take in sort of the top 50 picks. You know, if you can get another one of those, I know it might be a bit of a luxury, but you know, why not add some talent? I'm comfortable with any of that stuff, frankly.
Rob, I feel like the first time we spoke, like 5 years ago, we discussed that we must get Calais Campbell when he leaves Arizona, and it's amazing that it's still the same guy that looks like the perfect fit for the Seahawks defense. And yeah, I agree, but it's probably also worth saying that these coaches must have spent collectively high double, low triple digit hours planning how they're going to use Jamal Adams and probably Darrell Taylor as well. And in reality, we've got nothing out of the pair of them. Now, Darrell Taylor's perhaps a performance-based thing, but maybe he needs to learn the scheme and next year will be better. On Cody Barton, you know, you said yourself, they clearly love Ryan Neal. So it wouldn't stun me if the plan was always that Ryan Neal would feature quite heavily. And maybe Cody Barton's filling in for Jamal Adams in the main. I mean, this is complete conjecture. I'm guessing. But if you look at the names in which they would have wanted to get on the field, if Neal is as popular as it seems, I mean, you know, Brooks, they obviously are really, really tied to. I don't know. Maybe Jamal Adams was going to be a guy that featured and a lot more, and Cody Barton is kind of keeping that seat warm. And thank goodness his performances are improving week on week to justify that.
Interesting point. Interesting. Let's wrap things up. We've done an hour. If there's any sort of last super chat that anyone wants to send in, get it in now because we're wrapping up now. But final thought from everybody. I'll start with my own. I think just again to repeat it, the offensive scheming and design fantastic. The execution from Geno Smith superb. Love the way the defense is really starting to improve. Yep, they're going to face tougher opponents than Daniel Jones and whatever the Giants put out on the field today at receiver and tight end, but they shut down Saquon Barkley. Really impressive. This team is capturing the imagination of fans again, which I think is, you know, it's a great credit to everybody involved. And I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I, you know, gave out a loud cheer when Tyler Lockett scored. That's the first time I've done that. I can't remember the last time I did that watching the Seahawks. It's been such a long time. So was just enjoying it, just really enjoying it. I am still awaiting to find out whether I've got accreditation for the Munich game. That is probably going to come any day now. And I'm increasingly hoping that I have, because I fancy a little trip to Germany in a couple of weeks. I hope I'm sat in Munich doing this with you guys in 2 weeks' time. So yeah, it's you know, fair play to everybody. I think everybody deserves an awful lot of credit. The coaches, the front office, and the players for at least, if nothing else, giving us the first half of the season, which has been way beyond expectations. Robbie, what is your final thought today?
Can I just start a Geno chant like they were doing at the
whatever you want.
That's it. Listen. That's what
I want a Geno chant now, Robbie. You don't get to tease that.
Geno. All right. Listen, that and you know, I just really like this team. Is just fun to watch. I'm really enjoying the season. Way more invested than I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to sit back and just kind of like, another loss. I think I'm actually more invested in watching the Broncos lose because I wanted a higher draft pick. So for me, I think that's interesting. You know, just it's an interesting dynamic to be in. If you'd have told me, you know, like I said at the beginning of the season that the Seahawks would be in this position and the Broncos were in that position, I would have thought the roles were reversed. So it's fun to watch, and just, you know, credit to Shane Waldron and offense for keeping it going. It's super fun to watch.
And Adam, I was no doubt pleased for. He must have a name for it when Spurs win in dramatic fashion in the same weekend as the Seahawks win. But he's having a good sporting weekend.
That is good. Obviously, Arsenal kind of ruined that a bit today. You don't get the ultimate trifecta, but you know, we move. We can see how we go. I'm pleased Robbie brought up Shane Waldron there for a second, because I think he's been mentioned once on the show, and everyone loves looking at the greener grass on the other side, especially anyone that the Rams are coughing up, or, you know, Mike McDaniel is an offensive genius. And I'm not saying Waldron is there just yet, but if other teams' offenses were putting together this sort of, point scoring drives on a regular basis with their perceived lack of talent at quarterback, they were saying, wow, that OC's got head coach written all over him, doesn't he, for next year? And so I hope that doesn't happen at this stage, because it looks like a really nice relationship that they've all got going together. But I think Waldron has been fantastic this year, and they do say that Russell Wilson runs the Russell Wilson offense, and perhaps some of the hamstrung nature that we saw from Waldron last year was as much to do with personnel. And good luck to him that he's doing so well now. I'm gutted because I'm actually got events to cater for the next 2 Sundays, so I won't be able to watch the games and join the show, which I didn't think I'd be gutted to be missing Seahawks games going into early November this season. So I'm sorry that, well, maybe some people will be thrilled that I won't be able to join you for the next couple of weeks, but to the one person that might be disappointed that I'm not here, I'm sorry, and I'll be back with a vengeance come the end of the month when we're sort of 9-3 and just it's all eyes on Philadelphia for us.
Well, hopefully when you return to the live stream, Adam, they'll have a couple of further wins on their record as well, and they can keep things motoring along. Thank you to everybody who's watched this. There's been hundreds of people watching this live stream, which I'm really grateful for. Thank you for all of the super chats. Don't forget to like the video because that really helps. And if you haven't yet, the subscriptions are creeping up, but let's get them up a little further, even more. If you have not subscribed yet, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget, you can head over to SeahawksDraftBlog.com for the latest analysis. There's already a blog post reflecting on this win live on there now. And tomorrow I will be putting some scouting notes together from the weekend. I've watched a whole bunch of college football tape over the last couple of days, and that will go up as usual. And the horizontal board will be coming very soon. It's coming along very nicely. There are about 140 players on the horizontal board now. So that is creeping up as well, and that'll be published very, very soon. So, Robbie and Adam, thank you for your company again tonight. Thank you to everybody who has watched. Seahawks are 5-3 and looking pretty good at the moment. Fantastic game, fantastic win for the Seahawks today. Until next time, bye for now.